Mexico was the default answer for American retirees for 40 years. On January 1 it raised its income bar above the maximum Social Security check anyone can receive. So here is what $2,000 a month actually buys in Mexico, Panama and Costa Rica right now, which of the three will still let you stay, and the one that leaves you the most margin. One person, living alone, $2,000, no other income and no property. Same 7 categories in all three, in one real city each, on annual leases signed locally, never holiday rental prices. Number 1, and it is the one that decides this video. Mexico. On January 1, 2026, Mexico raised the income test for temporary residency to a reported $4,400 a month, up from around $2,800. Processing fees roughly doubled on the same day. The maximum Social Security benefit at full retirement age this year is $4,152. Mexico's threshold sits above it. So no American retiree living on Social Security alone qualifies for Mexican residency in 2026, however successful their career was. Mérida is still one of the best places to live on this list. Excellent private hospitals, the best flight connections of the three, extraordinary food, and among the lowest crime rates in Mexico. None of that helps if you cannot legally stay, and that is the distinction this whole comparison turns on. So that leaves Panama and Costa Rica actually competing, and Mexico as the cautionary tale. Now let us run all three through the same 7 categories anyway, because the day your income clears that bar, Mexico comes straight back onto the table. Let me pick the cities first, and explain why. For Mexico, the primary is Mérida in the Yucatan, with Oaxaca City as the alternative. Mérida is safe by Mexican standards, has excellent private healthcare, a beautiful colonial center and a large foreign community. Oaxaca is cheaper and more culturally intense, with thinner healthcare. For Panama, the primary is David, the capital of Chiriquí province, with Boquete as the alternative. I am deliberately choosing David rather than Boquete for the main budget, because Boquete is a highland expatriate enclave with expatriate prices, and David is a functioning Panamanian city where the numbers reflect Panama rather than reflecting Americans. For Costa Rica, the primary is Grecia in the Central Valley, with Atenas as the alternative. Both are inland Central Valley towns at moderate elevation, both have long-established foreign communities, and both avoid the coastal price premium that makes Guanacaste and the Pacific beaches unaffordable on this budget. One methodological note that matters enormously and that most comparisons get wrong. I am talking about annual lease rents, negotiated locally, in the local market. I am not using short-term rental platform prices. A furnished apartment listed by the night on a booking site can easily cost 3 or 4 times what the same apartment costs on a 12-month contract signed in Spanish. If you have been researching costs by browsing holiday rentals, every number you have is wrong and wrong in the same direction. Let us take housing first. David is the cheapest of the 3 primaries by a clear margin. It is a working city, not a retirement destination, and the rental market is priced for Panamanians. A decent 1-bedroom or small 2-bedroom apartment on an annual lease is genuinely affordable, and you get more space for the money than in either of the others. Mérida is next. Rents in Mérida have risen substantially over the last several years, driven by domestic Mexican demand from Mexico City as much as by foreigners, and the historic center in particular has gentrified sharply. Move a few neighborhoods out from the centro and the numbers improve a lot. Mérida also has a specific quirk, a great deal of the attractive housing stock is colonial houses rather than apartments, and those are frequently rented furnished to foreigners at a premium. Grecia is the most expensive of the three. Costa Rica is simply a more expensive country than Panama or Mexico, and this is the single most important thing to understand about it. The Central Valley towns are much cheaper than the coast, but they are not cheap in absolute terms. Now electricity and air conditioning, which deserves its own category because in this part of the world it is the line that quietly destroys budgets. Merida is hot. Genuinely, seriously hot, and humid, for most of the year, with the period from roughly March through September being difficult. Air conditioning in Merida is not a luxury, it is a habitability requirement for a lot of people, and Mexican residential electricity is priced on a tiered subsidy structure where heavy usage pushes you out of the subsidized tier into a much higher rate. A retiree who runs air conditioning in a poorly insulated colonial house through a Yucatan summer can see an electricity bill that is a serious fraction of their rent. Ask any long-term resident of Merida about their summer electric bill and watch their face change. David is also hot. It is a lowland city near the Pacific coast and the heat and humidity are real. Same problem, somewhat lower intensity. This is precisely why the highland alternatives exist. Boquete, at around 1100 meters, does not need air conditioning at all. Grecia and Atenas, in the Costa Rican Central Valley at similar elevations, also do not. That elevation is worth real money every month, and it is the strongest argument for paying the higher rent in the Costa Rican Central Valley or in Boquete rather than taking the cheaper lowland option. Food. All three are inexpensive relative to the United States if you eat local, and all three become expensive quickly if you eat imported. Mexico is the best of the three for food value by a wide margin. The markets are exceptional, produce is cheap, and eating out at local restaurants and market stalls costs very little. Mexico also has a large, sophisticated domestic food industry, which means most of what you buy is domestic rather than imported. Panama is reasonable. Fresh produce in Chiriqui is excellent and cheap, because it is the agricultural heart of the country. But Panama imports a great deal else, and imported goods carry real cost. Costa Rica is the most expensive of the three for groceries, and noticeably so. Costa Rica imports heavily and applies significant duties, and anything processed, imported or branded is expensive. The gap between eating like a Costa Rican and eating like an American is larger here than anywhere else in this comparison. Transportation. None of these three cities requires a car in absolute terms, but the experience differs. Merida has cheap and extensive buses, cheap taxis and ride-hailing, and a flat grid layout, so it is the easiest of the three to manage car-free, with the enormous caveat about heat that we covered in the walkability video. Walking in Merida in May at 2 in the afternoon is not really an option. David has buses and cheap taxis and is compact enough to manage. Getting between David and Boquete is a routine bus route. Grecia is the hardest. Costa Rican Central Valley towns are spread out, the public bus network exists and is cheap but is slower and less frequent, and most foreign residents there end up with a car. That is a significant hidden cost, and it is made worse by the fact that Costa Rica applies very high import duties on vehicles, so cars cost substantially more than in the United States and hold their value in a way that makes buying used less of a bargain than you would expect. Healthcare, and this is where the ranking genuinely shifts. Mexico has the strongest private healthcare of the three for the money, particularly in Merida, which has excellent private hospitals and a deep bench of specialists, many U.S. trained and English speaking. Private consultations and procedures are inexpensive. For an American retiree paying cash, Merida is close to ideal. Panama's best hospitals are in Panama City and are genuinely world-class, with some affiliated with major American institutions. David has solid regional facilities, and Panama City is a short flight or a long drive away for anything complex. The Pensionado discount schedule applies to medical consultations and prescriptions, which is a real ongoing saving. Costa Rica has the strongest public system of the three. Legal residents must enroll in and contribute to the CAJA, the national health system, which then provides comprehensive coverage. The contribution is income-based and mandatory, so treat it as a fixed cost rather than an option. The public system is genuinely good, with the usual public system trade-off of waiting times for non-urgent care, and there is a strong private sector alongside it in San Jose for anyone who wants to skip queues. So, Mexico best for cash pay private care, Costa Rica best for comprehensive structured coverage, Panama strong and well positioned in between. Now residency, and this is the section that decides the video. Panama. The Pensionado requires a guaranteed lifetime pension of $1,000 per month for a single applicant. Social Security qualifies. You are approved directly to permanent residency with no temporary phase and no renewal treadmill, and you receive the statutory discount schedule. Against our $2,000 budget, this clears with $1,000 to spare. Costa Rica. The Pensionado requires a permanent monthly income of at least $1,000 from a lifetime pension, which you must convert and deposit in Costa Rica. You receive temporary residency, renewable, with a path to permanent residency after 3 years. Also clears comfortably. Mexico. As of January 1, 2026, Mexico substantially raised the financial thresholds for temporary residency. Reporting on the new consular requirements puts the monthly income test at approximately $4,400, up from around $2,800 the year before, with a savings alternative in the 70s of thousands of dollars, and processing fees roughly doubled. Our retiree has $2,000 a month. They do not qualify. They are not close. They are short by more than their entire budget. And I want to give you the comparison that makes the scale of this clear. The maximum Social Security benefit for someone claiming at full retirement age in 2026 is $4,152 a month. Mexico's reported threshold is above that. Which means no American retiree living on Social Security alone qualifies for Mexican temporary residency in 2026, regardless of their earnings history. So what are the options for Mexico? Honestly, they are limited. You can qualify on savings if you have the required balance sitting in an account. You can qualify through family ties if you have a Mexican spouse or children. You can qualify through property ownership above a threshold value, which requires capital. Or you can live on tourist entries, which I want to address directly because a lot of people are going to think it. Americans have historically received up to 180 days on entry to Mexico. That has become considerably less reliable. Immigration officers now routinely issue much shorter periods, at their discretion, and they are visibly less tolerant of people who obviously live in Mexico and leave periodically to reset the clock. Beyond the legal risk, consider what it actually means. You cannot get residency-based healthcare. You have a weak position renting, banking and dealing with utilities. You cannot import household goods as a resident. And your entire life sits at the discretion of whichever officer you meet at the border on a given morning. That is not a retirement plan. That is a recurring gamble with your housing on the table. Mexico is still a wonderful place to live. It is, for now, largely closed as a legal retirement destination for people on modest pensions, and that is a change most of the internet has not caught up with. Flights home. Mexico wins this decisively. Mérida has direct routes to several American cities and Mexico City connects everywhere. Panama City is one of the best connected airports in Latin America and is a major hub, though from David you add a domestic leg. Costa Rica has good connections from San Jose, with Grecia close by, but fewer direct options than Mexico. Language and the foreign community. All three are Spanish-speaking and you should learn Spanish in all three. Practical English availability is highest in the established expatriate areas, Boquete, the Costa Rican Central Valley towns, and Mérida's foreign community. Panama City has widespread English in professional contexts, partly a legacy of the canal. Costa Rica has high English proficiency in the tourism and medical sectors. Now safety, and I want to handle this carefully, because this is where most content about Latin America is either irresponsibly alarmist or irresponsibly reassuring. I am not going to tell you that a country is safe or unsafe. That framing is useless, because these are not uniform places. Mexico's national homicide statistics are heavily concentrated in specific states and specific municipalities, and Yucatan State has consistently reported among the lowest rates in the country, dramatically below the national figure. Saying Mexico is dangerous tells you nothing about living in Mérida, and saying Mérida is safe tells you nothing about other parts of the country. Panama and Costa Rica both have lower national homicide rates than Mexico, though Costa Rica's has risen in recent years, driven largely by organized crime and drug trafficking activity concentrated in specific coastal and port areas rather than in the Central Valley towns. What actually affects a retiree day-to-day, in all three, is opportunistic property crime rather than violent crime. Theft, burglary, phone snatching, distraction scams and taxi fraud. That risk is manageable with ordinary precautions and is genuinely lower in the specific towns we are discussing than in the big cities. 3 Practical instructions. Read the current official State Department travel advisory, which is issued at the state or province level rather than the country level, for the specific place you are considering. Then talk to people who live in that specific neighborhood, because conditions vary by street in a way no statistic captures. And then weigh a rising trend more heavily than a current level, because you are planning to be there for a long time. One last category, exposure to tourist inflation. This is a real risk and it is the one people plan for least. Boquete, Mérida's historic center, and Costa Rica's beach towns have all seen substantial price increases driven by foreign arrival. If you move somewhere that is currently being discovered, you should expect your rent to rise faster than your Social Security cost of living adjustment. Panama's David and Costa Rica's less fashionable Central Valley towns are more insulated, because their prices are set by local demand. The general principle: the more a place is marketed to Americans, the faster its costs will move away from you. Renting for the first year rather than buying is not just about flexibility. It is about not being locked into a market you have not seen through a full cycle. Let me build the actual $2,000 budget for the winter, David in Panama, so you can see the shape of it rather than just hearing that it works. Rent on an annual lease for a decent 1-bedroom or small 2-bedroom, in a normal residential neighborhood rather than an expatriate enclave, is the largest line and still leaves the majority of the budget intact. That is the fundamental reason Panama works. Electricity is the second line and it is the volatile one, because David is hot and you will run air conditioning. Budget generously here rather than optimistically, and understand that this number swings a lot between the cooler months and the hot ones. Add water, which is inexpensive, and internet and mobile, which are reasonable and reliable. Food. Chiriquí is Panama's agricultural province, so fresh produce, chicken and local staples are cheap and good. Eating out at local restaurants costs very little. The line rises sharply the moment you start buying imported American brands, so this category is largely under your control. Transport, with no car. Buses in and around David are inexpensive, taxis are cheap, and the bus to Boquete when you want the cool mountain air is a routine trip. This is one of the smallest lines in the budget and it is the one that would triple if you bought a car. Healthcare. This is where the pensionado earns its keep, because the statutory discounts apply to medical consultations and prescriptions. Most retirees on this budget pay out of pocket for routine care, which is genuinely affordable, and carry a catastrophic policy for the serious events. Treat that premium as a fixed monthly cost and get quotes based on your real medical history before you commit to anything. Then the two lines people leave out and should not. A contingency reserve, every month, because appliances fail and teeth break and the reserve is what stops a bad month from becoming a crisis. And an annualized travel line for a trip back to the United States, because one round trip divided across 12 months is a real recurring cost. Put all of that together and a careful single retiree in David lands under $2,000 with genuine margin left over. That margin is the entire point of choosing Panama over the other two. It is not that Panama is spectacular. It is that Panama leaves you room to be wrong about something. Run the same exercise in Merida and the numbers work too, right up until the residency line, where the whole thing stops. Run it in Grecia and it works, but the margin is thin, the grocery line is noticeably higher, and if you end up needing a car, the margin disappears entirely. So let us name winners. Best overall value is Panama, and it is a clear win rather than a narrow one. The pensionado at $1,000 a month is the lowest bar of the three and delivers immediate permanent residency with statutory discounts on top. David's cost of living is the lowest of our three primary cities. The country uses the US dollar, so there is no currency risk at all on a fixed pension. Healthcare is strong with world-class options a short hop away. And Panama City is one of the best air links in the region. On a $2,000 budget, Panama leaves the most margin and asks the least of you administratively. Best healthcare and access to the United States is Mexico, and this is genuinely painful to say given everything else in this video. Merida's private healthcare is excellent and cheap, the flight connections are the best of the three, and the food and culture are extraordinary. If you have the income or the savings to qualify under the new 2026 thresholds, Mexico remains a superb choice. If you are living on an average Social Security benefit, it is now out of reach, and no amount of enthusiasm changes that. Best nature and slower lifestyle is Costa Rica, specifically the Central Valley. The climate at that elevation is close to perfect, requiring neither heating nor cooling. The Caja gives you comprehensive structured healthcare rather than cash pay uncertainty. The natural environment is genuinely spectacular and protected. The country is politically stable with a long democratic tradition. You are paying a real premium for all of that, groceries are expensive, and you will probably need a car. On $2,000 a month Costa Rica is workable in Grecia or Atenas and would not be on the coast. If I had to compress this entire video into one sentence, it would be this. Panama is the answer for the money, Mexico is the answer if you can clear the new bar, and Costa Rica is the answer if the climate and the nature matter more to you than the margin. And the broader lesson, which applies well beyond these three: check the residency threshold before you check the rent. A place you can afford but cannot legally stay in is not a retirement destination. It is a vacation with a deadline. If this helped, subscribing genuinely makes a difference. Now tell me in the comments, does Mexico's new income threshold change your plans, or were you already looking elsewhere? And if you are currently living in any of these three, what does your actual monthly budget look like? Real numbers from real residents are worth more than any research I can do, so please share them. Educational information only. Not financial, tax, medical, legal or immigration advice. Costs, exchange rates, safety conditions and immigration rules change. Verify current requirements with the official government source and consult qualified professionals before relocating. But $2,000 only works if the destination still passes the full test in 2026. Watch our 7-country breakdown next. It is on your screen now.